Hello, everybody, and welcome to College Football Wraparound. I'm Cooper Naylor, and I am happy that you have joined us. So, we've got a busy schedule here today. Um, so I'll get into that in just a second. As I was just looking at my game pick record, and let me tell you, at first, I didn't know how I was going to do, but I feel real good now after looking at it wholly. So, um, so let's go ahead. Let me show you this today's schedule. We're going to start with the Cooper Naylor poll, and then we'll talk about Clemson benching DJ Uiagalelei. We got six undefeated teams left. TCU is surprising everybody as one of those, and then we got the interim bowl. Could Tennessee lose? Ohio State Penn State game could determine Big Ten East. We got Charlotte and UAB. They are going to have a new head coach. Both teams will have new head coaches when they join the American. Heisman frontrunners. We're going to talk about our prediction recap. And then we've got game picks. So let's start by looking at the rankings real quick here. And so here is the rankings as it stands right now. Um so if you look at the top 6, there has not been any change. Ole Miss, of course, was number 7. They lost to LSU. Um, just going down the line, Syracuse lost. So that was the main changes. Of course, as you can see, it's not too much different. There are 2 new teams though, because Mississippi State and oh, can't remember who it was, but I gotta go back and look, but Mississippi State was dropped after their loss to Alabama and Kansas. So both teams dropped to 5-3 on the season. So only 2 dropouts. We replaced them with Illinois and NC State right there, as you can see at the bottom at 24 and 25. So of course, if UCLA and Illinois win today, they'll probably make a big jump in the rankings because most likely, well, I mean, Penn State, if they were to lose, they're going to drop. I mean, you look at some of these ranked matchups, we're going to see some shakeup in the rankings. And then some of these other games, too. I mean, we may see some shakeup as well. So we'll keep that in mind today. So, um, that was my rankings. Um, you can comment below. You can comment in the chat what you think because to be honest, I think that's accurate to what you're seeing. Um so we do have college football, but the CFP rankings will be coming out here soon. So we'll see how much mine is compared, like where I stand compared to the CFP, because let's be honest, the CFP rankings is more important than the AP. So, in all honesty, the rankings do not matter until we get to this point when we're talking about the CFP rankings. So, let's dive into some topics, and that is we're going to start by talking about DJ Uiagalelei being benched for Cade Klubnik against Syracuse, but Cade Klubnik will not start next week. It's going to be DJ Uiagalelei. Now, my thoughts on this is that, I mean, if we're all being honest about this, in the COVID year when DJ had to replace Trevor Lawrence against Notre Dame, of course, as most know, Trevor Lawrence had COVID and so couldn't play. So DJ, he got the nod as starting quarterback that game. Came out, looked really good. Okay. He was a Heisman front runner last year at the in the preseason. And we all know how that ended up. And so if we're all being honest about this, Dabo Sweeney is a good coach. But I think he's holding on to DJ much longer as a starter than what he probably should. Because watching the way Cade Klubnik came into that game last week and putting the team on his shoulders, I'm telling you, I would like to see Cade Klubnik get a start and see like what he can do for Clemson. Now, DJ Uiagalelei, if he were at a different school, I feel like like he would be really good for a team. He is a good quarterback. But for Clemson, Cade Klubnik is better. I mean, I don't see where you could really argue that right now. So we'll talk more about the Clemson situation later, but now I want to turn my attention that there are now only 6 undefeated teams left. Those teams include Georgia, Tennessee, Ohio State, Michigan, TCU, and Clemson. So, TCU being the one that's kind of shocking. The others are, well, I think TCU and Tennessee are the ones that are kind of shocking because I think some may have thought Bama would be in that position um to be undefeated at this point in the season because I don't know. I mean, at the preseason, I don't know how many people picked Tennessee to beat Alabama, but I feel like it increased as the season progressed. And so we've gotten to this point where um now you've got 6 undefeated teams. And if you want my honest prediction, because looking at that, we are not going to be left with 6 because Ohio State's still got to play Michigan. Georgia's still got to play Tennessee. And when it comes to TCU and Clemson, anything can happen with them. Because I would watch because Clemson could get beat to somebody they really shouldn't. Like next week, they could end up losing to Notre Dame at Notre Dame. I'm just saying, I'm not making that pick right now, but I think that if you don't go in with the right mindset and you're going to South Bend, Indiana, and it's gonna be cold because it's gonna be November. I would not. I mean, I think it's gonna be a good football game. I really do. I think it's gonna be a good football game, even though Notre Dame has really kind of stunk this season. They really have, and it just I think that game against Clemson may be the one to put them on the right track with Marcus Freeman. And I mean, here's the thing, folks, with Notre Dame. The reason they've stunk, they got a new head coach. I mean, come on. Had Brian Kelly been there, I feel like the team may be more together. Also, you got to remember early in the season, quarterback Tyler Buckner, who I thought looked good against Ohio State. He got hurt. So you can't fault a team if they had an injury and they've got a new head coach. I mean, you got to give it some time to progress. I mean, I've said this multiple times here on the channel that you, I mean, this is my honest opinion. 3 years is your evaluation time for a new head coach. Anything less than that, you're going to have to explain why exactly you're firing. And if you cannot give a very detail oriented speech about why you're firing, then here's my thing. Do not fire the coach. And I mean, okay, if you're a school that's like rotating coaches every year, how in the world are the players supposed to get comfortable with the school? You want to know why when you get some of these players to go to these schools that rotate coaches every few years, reason why you have so many leave because they don't keep coaches. That is the issue. If if colleges would be more willing to wait the 3 years and see what you got, then I feel like things may work out better. Now, coaches that were hired during the COVID pandemic season, I feel like what you got to do there, erase everything you saw from that, and you got to say it's only been 2 years. Because, I mean, let's be honest. You had no spring practice, you had no fall practice. It was basically you got 1 week of practice, and then boom, it's time for the season. So, anything you can say about actually, you can't really base anything off of that. I'm just being honest, folks. It's not fair. So, um, we'll talk about that later. So, okay, so TCU is 7-0, and they are. I mean, they're looking really good. TCU, beat Kansas State, and I think the game that really put them on the map was when they beat Oklahoma at home so bad, like they did, because everybody expected Oklahoma to be really good, and they're not really as good because they got Brent Venables, who's a new head coach, has never been a head coach. So, I mean, give it time for Oklahoma, but TCU took advantage and they delivered. They delivered. They looked really good, folks. I'm telling you, I think TCU, even with, I mean, even if they're undefeated, though, here's the thing you stumble into. Would they be included in the playoff if there are some other teams that are just as good as them? What is my answer? No. Even if they're undefeated, I'm sorry. But I feel like a one loss Alabama, if they play incredible down the stretch, and let's do some hypothetical here, okay? You look at the SEC championship game, and let's say Tennessee is undefeated going to the SEC championship game, 12-0. Alabama comes in 11-1. Alabama wins that game by 3 points. So, what is the point differential between Alabama and Tennessee for the whole season? 0. Essentially a tie because Tennessee wins that football game in Knoxville 52-49. Alabama, well, they get a 3-point win in Atlanta. So, they have tied for the season. Both will get in. That is what's going to happen. You could see a situation where 3 SEC schools get in. Trust me, it is possible. And I think if there were 3 teams in the SEC that were good enough to play for the playoff, you have got to do it. I don't care if people think it's SEC bias. I don't care. Look, here's my thoughts because I think with that scenario, Alabama would be number 1 after winning the SEC championship game. Number 2, most likely would be Ohio State or whoever the Big Ten East champ is, because if we look at it, I think you could have a 3-way split right there because I think, okay, so Michigan beat Penn State. Today, I think Penn State could beat, if like, let's do hypothetical again. Penn State beats Ohio State, and then Ohio State beats Michigan. You look at it, and basing it off of all the win-loss stuff, I think Ohio State would play for the Big Ten championship game. I think. Now, do not quote me on that because I am not 100% sure what that would look like. But um that surely would be interesting to think about. And I mean, Ohio State, I think, would come in 12-1, and there is your um so there is your playoff. Alabama, Ohio State, numbers 1 and 2. Then I think you get Tennessee at 3, even with the loss in the SEC title game. You could have 4 12-1 teams. Well, actually, 3 12-1, 1 11-1, and that number 4 team would be Georgia. Alabama and Georgia would not have played this season. And even though they were conference, even though they were in the conference, they didn't play each other. So it would work out because then Alabama and Georgia would play for the first time. Ohio State and Tennessee play for the first time. And then you could see Alabama and Tennessee in the championship game. So you get a third Alabama Tennessee matchup, and we determine who's better in the championship at in LA. Storybook ending. That is how you work the hypotheticals. All right. So the interim bowl is today between Arizona State and Colorado. Carl Durrell, Herm Edwards, both gone now. What is this game going to look like? It's going to be not a fun football game to watch. That is honest. Because I feel like Arizona State will win this football game. Maybe. I'm not sure. I'll pick this game a little bit later, but it will be interesting. If you look at it, Herm Edwards mainly got fired because there was an investigation throughout this past like the preseason leading up. There was a bunch of stuff coming out about Arizona State, what they were doing during COVID. So, of course, that helped him get out the door. And for Carl Durrell, he was just nobody ever liked him at Colorado. He was never given a chance, so he's gone now. So, what does it look like in this game? I'm thinking it's like a very close football game, not very much scoring to be exact, and it'll be interesting just to see what happens, but I don't expect this to be very high scoring at all. Going down the stretch for both of these teams, I don't know who they will hire, but I do feel like it'll be interesting to see who they hire. Because I don't think Arizona State's going to get another guy as big name as Herm Edwards. And for Colorado, I'm not sure. Because you don't want to get another guy like Mel Tucker who's going to stay there for 1 year and then take another job. And then if you look at Arizona State, you want to find a guy who fits the culture there. So we'll see what happens. But this game today, it just, to me, it doesn't really appeal to me as a very high scoring game. So we'll just see what happens between those two teams and go from there. So, turning my attention now, could Tennessee lose? It would be a very long shot. And here's why. They got Kentucky. Will Levis is a great quarterback. He's going to be in the NFL. Only thing that is hurting him right now is the fact that he's not been completely healthy this year. And that right there has hurt the team big time because there have been, they've needed him for some of those games. And it's incredible, though, that they have just kind of been garbage whole year, in my opinion. Even though they are, I believe, 5-2, they, in my opinion, I don't see them beating Tennessee. Watching this Tennessee team, you've got to have the best defense to be able to beat them. That offense is going to score, and you're going to have to put up points yourself. Do I believe that this offense Kentucky's got can keep up with it? No. No. Look, in my honest opinion, there are two teams in college football that I believe could keep up with the pace Tennessee is going. Those two teams, Alabama and Ohio State. I feel like you get Ohio State's offense with CJ Stroud, it could be a shootout. You get Alabama and Bryce Young, we've seen it's a shootout. So, um, I don't see Tennessee losing till if they get to the SEC championship game. Feel like that would be their loss right there against Georgia. Well, not Georgia, but Alabama. But I don't see Tennessee losing. They are just really good. And it's incredible to see what they've done this season. And Josh Heupel, he is the difference right there. And his offense has really helped them look really good. Their quarterback, Hendon Hooker, he's incredible. So we'll keep our eye on Tennessee and Kentucky. We'll talk about it a little bit later in the show. So, all right. So Ohio State and Penn State could determine the Big Ten East. And this is true because there is a lot we could talk about the two. This is going to be a game, and it's really going to be the matchup between CJ Stroud and that Ohio State offense against the defense of Penn State. Can Penn State get enough stops on defense to beat Ohio State? That I don't know. I really don't know right now because I just don't know if Penn State's got what it takes because I feel like this is going to be another situation where it feels a lot like Alabama Tennessee this year where it's going to be high scoring football. So, I mean, the game is going to be incredible. So we'll see what happens. But I think that it's going to be very high scoring. I think you're looking at CJ Stroud throwing for a lot of yards. And then Sean Clifford, I feel like, has got to play incredible football too, which I believe he's going to show up in this game. So, um, I'm I'm going to say that this is going to be like a 45-42 game. That's what I'm thinking. Because I feel like Penn State's going to show up um offensively. So, we'll see what happens with that game and it should be a lot of fun. All right. Charlotte and UAB are going to be joining the American with a new head coach next year. Both teams, new head coaches. Will Healy fired, and Bill Clark, of course, stepped down before the season. So, what does this mean? Well, they could find coaches that fit the American conference on, like the way teams play, and find a way to acclimate better with that. Now, Bill Clark, I think he would have done good. Of course, he stepped down. So we'll see what happens. But as far as Charlotte, I'm not sure where they go. It'll be interesting just to see what they do, but I think both teams are in a good position currently with what they have. So we'll see what happens. You may see some interims get hired this season, I feel like, because I feel like there are some interim head coaches that are looking really good in my opinion. Um so we'll just see what happens, but with Charlotte and UAB, I don't know where they're going to go. That'll be interesting to see. All right. We are going to talk about Heisman front runners now. And where do I look at right now for front runners? Well, first of all, I think really the top guy is probably, I don't know. Who? I mean, because there have been a lot of guys this season who have looked really good. Um, but the guy who's probably number one for me would be CJ Stroud because he is the most important player to his team and he's played ridiculous football this season. So CJ Stroud would be my number one. My number two would be Bryce Young because I feel like he is without Bryce Young, I feel like Alabama is not Alabama. We saw that against Texas A&M. Jalen Milroe is not good. Not good at all. He should be a tight end for all I care because that was rough watching Bama in that offense. Because I mean, let's be honest, watching how Texas A&M is self-destructing themselves, um, they are trash. A&M is trash. Bama should have beat them much worse, but they had Jalen Milroe at quarterback. So I mean, that put Alabama in the same kind of trash feeling. So, oh, that was a burn to Alabama right there. Ooh. Either way, um, number three would for me would probably be Hendon Hooker. I mean, the man is doing incredible stuff for Tennessee. They are looking incredible. So Hendon Hooker would be right there. And then, so that's my top three. If you want me to give another one, I feel like running back Blake Corum looks really good for Michigan. Expect him to do great things tonight against Michigan State, but he's played really good football. Of course, last year he had Hassan Haskins to really to play underneath. So I mean, this year he is the feature back. So I mean, he gets much more touches this season, and he gets to showcase what he can do. So, yep, that is my top four for Heisman front runners right now. And then now we get to my predictions recap. And I told you earlier that I was feeling really good about where I was last week, and rightfully so. This is the best week I've had. Last week was 8-2. I feel so good knowing that I had a week that was incredible. I'm telling you, because coming off that week 7 where I went 4-6, it felt good to get an 8-2 mark. And now I'm 45-27 on the year so far. Of course, as y'all know, week 4 I was at the beach, so I didn't have a chance to do the show. And so that's the reason why I didn't do week 4. And so now it is time to pick some games. First, starting with the game coming up at 11 a.m., Arkansas and Auburn. This one is one of those games where really both teams have really not played great football down the stretch. I mean, Arkansas, if you want my honest opinion, um, they looked really good at the beginning of the season. Then they get that loss at Texas A&M. Then they lose to Alabama. And then they just, I believe it was Mississippi State that beat them. So Arkansas to me, they, I feel like they're still, they're still there. They still have potential to end the season on a very high note. And I think they get this win today because Auburn is complete garbage. Auburn is a terrible football team, and it is not the coach's fault because the team does not have good players. And I feel like most of these players were Malzahn. Malzahn brought them in. And okay, here's my thing. The offensive line is terrible. The offensive line is just complete garbage. That has affected the offense greatly. They cannot run the football this year. And, well, they can run the football decently with Tank Bigsby. He's a good running back. Either way. But he's on a terrible football team. Folks, his draft stock has got to be affected by this. I'm not sure where he is, but Auburn has affected him greatly. That was a terrible choice to go to Auburn. And then the passing game is awful. Now, say all you want about it's Brian Harson's fault. No, let's be honest. The offensive line is terrible. So the quarterback has to get out and run sometimes when the offensive line breaks down. And here's the thing. Most of the time you're not going to get great plays if you're having to every time run out of the pocket and try to make a play. I mean, as a young quarterback like Robbie Ashford, you're not going to make a play with that. It's just going to be too difficult. And if you're looking at TJ Finley, he's just complete garbage. He is a terrible quarterback. So we'll just see what happens to the Auburn Arkansas game, but I think Arkansas wins it. Oklahoma and Iowa State, both teams they go from last year being top quality in the Big 12 to now this year being not. That sums it up very nicely. And I do note there's one viewer that is fixing to get mad at me with my pick, but I'm going to pick Iowa State in this game because I think they have had Oklahoma's number a couple times in the last few years, so I expect it to happen again. And then we go to Arizona State and Colorado. I'm going to take Arizona State in a very low-scoring football game. It'll be interesting, but Arizona State will win. Ole Miss and Texas A&M. I think Ole Miss blows the doors off of A&M. Ole Miss, I feel like, is going to look for some redemption here. They are looking to avenge their loss to LSU, and I think they're going to do a good job. They're going to smoke A&M. I think if you're really looking at a score here, I think you look at like 45-3 Ole Miss because I think A&M is just complete garbage this year. And Jimbo Fisher, yeah, I think he should have stayed at Florida State a few years ago because he's not done good for A&M. I mean, he's worse than Sumlin. Of course, Sumlin was helped out because he had Johnny Manziel for the first few years. But, yeah, complete garbage. A&M. And then we got Illinois and Nebraska. Honestly, I'm going to take Nebraska in this game. I like what I've been seeing because I think Nebraska with Mickey Joseph has played really good. And honestly, Mickey Joseph, I think, should be considered for the job because he's done a good job bringing them back after the firing of Scott Frost. Although, yes, you did have that blowout loss to Oklahoma in your first game, but I do feel like they've come back and looked really good. So I think Mickey Justice has got to be considered, and I think Nebraska wins the football game today. Florida and Georgia. And this one is going to be fun to see. Georgia, I feel like, wins it barely because I think Florida's going to give them a run for their money. I don't know if Georgia's going to put up a lot of points in this game. So I think this is going to be like, I would say 24-17. I think that's a fair score for these offenses because I feel like they're not, I mean, they're not incredible, but they're not terrible. So I mean, and that's the thing. I don't think Georgia beats Tennessee without having to put up a lot of points because I just don't see Georgia putting up a lot of points on Tennessee because I don't think they're going to be able to play in a shootout. So, Georgia beats Florida. Notre Dame and Syracuse. I got Syracuse. I like what I'm seeing from them. They're having a great season. So I'm going to go Syracuse. Oklahoma State and Kansas State. I'm going to go Oklahoma State. They're playing good football, and if they go down this road, I feel like honestly, I think they could win the Big 12 this season. I think they're going to get redemption against TCU. And then we got Kentucky and Tennessee. Tennessee will smoke Kentucky this evening. I mean, I don't see Kentucky playing closely with Tennessee. Kentucky's just not going to be able to put up enough points against Tennessee. And then the game of the week coming up in 18 minutes. Ohio State and Penn State. I'm going to go Ohio. Well, see, I caught myself there. Upset alert. Penn State will win. That's right. Penn State will win this football game, folks. I think it's going to happen. I think my hypothetical will happen where Penn State beats Ohio State, but yet Ohio State will find a way to win the Big Ten East because they will beat Michigan. So, that is college football wraparound for today. We got our picks out of the way. Later today, we may do a broadcast. May. I'll have to talk things over with my partner on this, partner with the channel, and who knows, we may do a broadcast today. So I'm going to leave that very mysteriously out there. So, that is college football wraparound for today. We thank y'all for watching. We will see you again very, very soon. Goodbye, everybody.